I spent a good portion of the first year of my life in that hut, because that became the family's temporary home. It was a log hut that had been used as a residence for slaves. At the age of 8, I was taught to milk a cow. By the time I was 20, I could milk a cow faster, I think, than anyone else in Virginia.
Well, as was their practice, they always would bring a nice little box of candy for the children. Of course, the children never got to eat that candy, because as soon as they left, Augusta promptly got that box of candy and put it in the china closet in full view, but it was locked with the key there. So that was put there because someday if she had to go and see a sick friend, she was going to take that candy, and that happened often. So my sister Dolly was the real instigator of this. One day when my father and mother went out, she decided we should have a little party. Came a time when they had to go visit a sick friend, and she reached in the china closet for that box of candy. She said, "Gee, this feels very light." We had packed it back, you know, tied it with the little ribbon on it. They gave me that job. They didn't say anything, but out came that strap, and we lined up for our beating. We ate the chocolates that were meant for us. We got a beating because we ate the chocolates.
One of the things that we would do during the summertime when we didn't have anything else to do, we'd get chew some chewing gum up and put it on a string, get part of it out and wind it up on a string, and then put the string with a gum on it down in a tarantula hole. You could see them because they look like huge ant holes. You put that string and the gum down there and kind of fish around with it. Pretty soon you'd feel kind of a bite on it, and we'd bring the string up slowly, and sure enough there'd be a tarantula on the end of that gum. And we'd take it and put it in a what we call a mason jar, glass jar, put the lid on it, and pretty soon we'd have 2 or 3 of those tarantulas, and we'd put them in that jar and let them fight.
Right about that time we had come around, and we were on a broad reach and looked up to the west, and you could see just an angry lip of a squall line coming across. And Rufford capsized. This was cold water. This was in May. By the time Rufford came in, he had taken a pretty sound bath. He was dripping wet. His teeth were chattering. But I remember Rufford, it's almost like he wanted some collaborators with him as he tried to explain that he really didn't capsize that boat, because he knew he's going to have to write a capsize report. And so he was explaining at great volume through chattering teeth why he really didn't capsize that boat. And that's when I saw in Jack, Jack's kind of a quiet man, but there is a strength in him, that Jack finally reached out and touched Rufford on the forearm and said, "Rufford, get dried off and go home." And Rufford kind of stiffened, almost to attention, and said, "You're right," and marched off to his car to get his dry clothes.
There was more colorful language than that.
Many of my classmates had enlisted right out of high school. I chose to go ahead and start college anyway, although I knew what would be coming eventually. And it was just no question about it in my mind or anybody else that I knew. I did wind up in the Air Corps, took basic training at Atlantic City, New Jersey. We would march on a boardwalk, sing on a boardwalk, take calisthenics on the beach. And all of the hotels in Atlantic City had been taken over by the Army. Most of them were used for barracks at that time, but eventually they became hospitals to treat the wounded that were coming back from Europe.
We were flying a mission, and we were looking out the windows and all of a sudden we saw something whiz by like that. It was gone. And we started thinking, what in the world was that? And we decided it didn't have a propeller on it. We had never seen a jet aircraft before, but it was probably moving at 500, 600 miles an hour. And here we are flying maximum speed 150 miles an hour. So we thought if they had gotten that plane into production a year sooner, then it might have been a completely different story, because we couldn't have stood up to that kind of a fighter. They were just too fast for us.
In order to be accepted here by the society here, you had to adapt to the American way of living. And he was all for new and modern things. I remember when he bought my mother an electric iron. And all her friends came over to see it. It was a big thing. When my father remarried, I was 7 or 8, somewhere in there. And he married a woman who was entirely different from my mother, Annie. She didn't speak a word of English. We didn't speak a word of Italian. And we hadn't met this woman before. My father brought her home one day and said, "This is your new mother."
Imagine a country boy out of the cornfield in Washington selling silk hosiery to ladies. And I remember on one occasion in College Park, a gentleman met me at the door. He was apparently a clockmaker. He had the house loaded with clocks. And he greeted me as though I was a long-lost grandson or something, and took me in and showed me all the way around through the house.
Probably running out of either belly or space on his shirt or something, but we'll take care of that somehow. But I'm so pleased that I have 14 little kids that came out of our marriage. Whew, boy, what a blessing. And they are truly a blessing from God. It's a gift from God that you get all of these descendants because you didn't strangle your teenagers.
You have to have a sense of humor. Really and truly you do. And he does have a sense of humor. Most people only know his serious side, but he can be a lot of fun.
What she's saying about me is strictly prejudiced.
One of the things that I would pass on to others is don't sell yourself short, and don't waste a lot of time. You got to spend as much time as you can with your children, with your grandkids, so that you don't miss out on everything that goes on. It's just so easy to let it slip by, and you miss it.